Shalom, everyone. In the Nazarene, that's what we're called. There's something for the masses to see, and then there's something for the initiated to see. It's the darkness hiding in open view. We call them Wiccans, witches, warlocks, wizards, shamans. That's what they go by. It's poison doctrine. My name is Lew White, and you're at Torah Institute today. And today's topic is going to be on a subject that a lot of people have never heard of, and a lot of people have, but it's going to point to something that goes all the way back to the very beginning, and it's a root problem. It's called, in this seminar, for this purpose, it's called syncretism. And it's a blending of light and darkness together. And that's it's been a problem with Israel from the beginning. And it's an opposing force of rebellion. And it's why Yahuah wanted people to marry within the nation and not embrace other peoples. But basically, it's all about love, as we always say. And how to pursue love. But love is not a thing, it's a person. And the world system, as you're going to see, is going to point to love as a thing that you have to pursue in a certain type of person. But in fact, it's not about yourself. It's about that person that we know as love. His name is Yahushua. Now, one of the wisest men in the world wrote, "What has been will be again." And another wise man who was inspired by Yahushua said, "A dog returns to its vomit, and that vomit is the old religion." And this is a topic about the old religion. Witches and sorcerers that might be watching this are going to find out that this is all about their pursuit of truth and love. And Yahushua, he said that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and the way to love. It involves the worship of the host of heaven. The host of heaven is not the heavenly host. It's the host of heaven. They're animals that are imaginary creatures that are in the stars. And this is how the dragon managed to corrupt the viewpoint and the minds of men all across the nations and the world and time itself. And it's going to be very interesting. First, we're going to real quickly run through this for about 30 seconds. These are the traditional terms on the left, and on the right you'll see the original Hebrew terms. So you can just slow this tape or DVD down or YouTube presentation and read these. The word Lord is not an evil word, but when it's used as a proper noun, it is ascribing itself to the equivalent Hebrew word B-A-A-L, which is not a good thing because B-A-A-L means Lord. Now, Yahuah is the name, and Yahushua is the name of him in the flesh. And the Hebrew word for Christ is actually Mashiach. And we're going to not use the word G-O-D. We're going to use the word Elohim, or El. And the tribe known as the Jews, which is one of the tribes of technically 13 tribes, is Yahudim, which means worshipers of Yah. Yah is the short form of Yahuah. And we are called Nazarene. That's according to Acts 24, verse 5. And Yisrael are all the tribes sown among the nations, scattered, and being reawakened today. One of the preparation techniques for the return of Yahushua is given to us by the scriptures. A lot of people are worried about finding out when it's going to be. But it's not about when it's going to be. It's about being prepared for when it does happen. Because prophecy is not about when, but what and who. Now, Malachi 4, verse 4 through 6 says, "Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, which I commanded him in Horeb for all Israel, laws and right rulings. See, I am sending you Eliah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuah, and he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with utter destruction." Now, it's talking about the Torah of Moshe, and that is today in this world by people who claim to follow the Messiah, it's spoken of as evil. So what is good is called evil, and what is evil is called good. And I'm going to show you how that happens. This is the Torah of Yahuah. It teaches us love, and it's a person. This is his personality. Number one, I am Yahuah, your Elohim. Have no other before my face. Now, what do we see when we look up in the night sky? I want you to think about that. And then I'm going to bring you back to that remembrance. Number two, you do not bow to images. Images. Number three, you do not cast the name of Yahuah, your Elohim, to ruin. Number four, remember Shabbat to keep it Kodesh. That means to be set apart. That's a day of the week, by the way, and it also has ramifications for annual festival days, days of rest. But it's primarily, and first, it's a day of the week, the seventh day. Now, number five, respect your father and your mother. Number six, you do not murder. Number seven, you do not break wedlock. Number eight, you do not steal. Number nine, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Number 10, you do not covet your neighbor's wife, house, field, servants, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And these things produce love. That's what they're designed to do. Now, love is achieved in another way according to the world system. The world system embraces the pursuit of love through a selfishness where you are attracted to someone because of the world system's plan. And I'm going to show you what that is. It's the old religion. Now, this first part that I just read to you is the covenant between Israel and the maker of the heavens and the earth, Yahuah. And it is our relationship. It's a marriage covenant. And it's an eternal covenant of love. It's literally our marriage vows, and it's written in our heart if we receive it. Now, it teaches us how to love, but instead the world is going to receive folly because it's called astrology. That's one of the terms for it. It's involving zoo animals, a zodiac, and stellar patterns are prohibited in the scriptures. I mean, we're not supposed to connect the dots. He never said to do that. That is what the adversary, the dragon, did, in order that when we look up at the night sky, we see those things and we're reminded of what the dragon did to corrupt our hearts. He didn't corrupt the skies. He corrupted our viewpoints. It's the worship of the host of heaven. And one of the terms in Hebrew for the constellations, constellation. Stella means star in Latin, and con means to bring together, to bring them together with lines and dots, bring the dots together in a picture. So constellation, the Hebrew word for constellation or collection of stars is Mazaroth. Now here's an example. When you look at this picture, if your heart has been corrupted, you're going to see some familiar things, and you're going to think, oh, I see someone up there that I recognize. Well, there's a lot of excuses given for this. But who corrupted it? Who is the one that did this? Did Yahuah tell us anything about this? This thing that the world has taught us? Well, remember, love is a person, and the person and the pursuit of him is what it's all about. And on your left here, you see how to pursue love. This is what teaches you love. How to get to know the one that is love and truth. On the right is an example from an Egyptian tomb, and inside of it is a woman, and there are beasts, living animals, all around this woman. And those living animals depict the old religion, the pursuit of love, the selfishness of, well, they ask, what's your sign? So that we can find out what month and day you were born. and what year it was so that we can track back through the hour watching, the horoscope. Well, who is this woman? Are you going to build on this system, the world system, or are you going to build on the true foundation? See, the person whose character is reflected in these words. But who this woman is the harlot that's mentioned in Revelation 17, and the beasts. And who gives the power to this woman and the beast? Well, now, what deception has spread like leaven into the whole world? See, we have a proneness to rebel. That's the way we're wired. And there's an astronomical clock. There's that word, astronomy, which is talking about the astral design the world system has taught us. It's built in 1410, this clock tower, and it's in the city of Prague, and it's on the face of one of the, I think it's the southern wall of the government building there, and it's in the Czech Republic today. It's over 600 years old, built in 1410, and it's the oldest actual working clock. But this pattern that's depicted on the clock you see up here is 4,200 years old. It was actually the old religion designed by Nimrod and Semiramis and Tammuz. And it involves Babel's Zodiac. Well, Babel's Zodiac is directly addressed in Deuteronomy 5, verses 6 through 10, for those of you that think it's innocent. I am Yahuah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. You have no other mighty ones against my face. You do not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them nor serve them, for I, Yahuah your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing kindness to thousands, to those who love me and guard my commands. So this Stella folly of connecting the dots is mentioned right in the midst of this commandment. He's talking about a likeness of which is in the heavens above. What would that be? The zodiac. These zoo are living animals. Zoo means zodiac. It involves animals. The constellations. It's a combining of stars. In the Egyptian system, the world system that they inherited from Babel, they depicted it on the drawings. There's a woman that's drawn, and there's stars all over her skin. And then there's these interpretations here. And then there's this other fellow named G.E.B. Her name in that pantheon is N-U-T. But she's had many names, as you know. E-A-S-T-E-R, A-S-H-E-R-A-H. She's got many, many names. But if you basically understand that this is a world system that many people know about, but very few people have been, this hasn't touched, basically. This has basically touched almost everybody on this planet. Everybody knows a little bit about it. But it reaches out like tendrils, and you see different features of it in religion all the time. It's mixing in now with the Nazarene. And back in the the early 1800s, a woman wrote a book called Mazaroth. And basically there was a reaction to that book by Alexander Hislop called The Two Babylons. And it's my belief that this woman that wrote this book on the Mazaroth influenced and the reaction that Alexander Hislop had to expose the error, And that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of siding with him. And then along comes Ethelbert William Bullinger, and he embraces this book and says, wow, this is great. He writes his own book, and he calls it The Witness in the Stars. So he flopped the other way. So this thing is very insidious. In Babel's Trinity, we have Tammuz, Semiramis, and Nimrod. And once was pagan is still pagan. So if something is pagan at one time, it's still going to be pagan in the future. Now, Alexander Hislop wrote The Two Babylons, and he was exposing how darkness mixed itself into the customs of Western Christianity. And in response to his book, the Catholics had to make a reply to his book. The Catholics came along. Cardinal Newman wrote a book. I'm going to show you what that was about in just a few moments. Deuteronomy 4, starting at 15, says, "Therefore diligently guard yourselves, for you saw no form when Yahuah spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you should do corruptly and shall make for yourself a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the heavens, the likeness of any creature that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth, and lest you lift up your eyes to the heavens." He's not encouraging this. "And shall see the sun and the moon and the stars and all the host of the heavens, and you be drawn away into bowing down to them and serving them, which Yahuah your Elohim has allotted to all the peoples under the heavens." So he's given these things to all the peoples under the heavens, but they're not to be bowed down to. You hear people say, "Well, what's your sign?" It's because they're looking for love, and they want to know in their astrological formulations whether or not you're compatible, because they're selfish. See, it isn't about self, it's about Yahusha. If you put on Yahusha, then you have love, you see. They have charts and readings and daily horoscopes on TV and print and online, and they use mediums, astrologers, and prognosticators under different titles. But in Yeshayahu, or Isaiah 44, starting at 24, it says, "Thus said Yahuah, your Redeemer, and he who forms you from the womb, I am Yahuah doing all, stretching out the heavens all alone, spreading out the earth with none beside me, frustrating the signs of the babblers and driving diviners mad, turning wise men backward and making their knowledge foolish." They have real complicated systems, as I'm sure many of you are aware. Now, this astronomical clock that's in Prague, if you look very, very closely at it, you're going to see there's an astronomical disk involving the signs of the Zodiac. Usually they use 12 of them, but actually if you look deeply, there's 13. Actually, the scientists today use about 88 constellations, but in the equatorial region, there's actually 13. There's one that's called Serpens. I wonder who that is. They usually eliminate that one because Serpens is hiding from us. Anyway, his influences. We know who he is. He's the dragon. In fact, dragon is translated from Nakash, and it means serpent. Anyway, the host of heaven are found on the floor of a synagogue. Okay? Like that would justify it. Oh, it's okay. We found it on the floor of a synagogue. It must be fine. Well, why is the synagogue in ruins? Ask yourself that. Yahuah didn't like it. Anyway, on the floor of a synagogue in Sepphoris, that was built around the 6th century, they estimate. But here's the thing. This place was real close to Nazareth, where Yahusha was raised. Now, here's something I want to point out to you. Stephen, the one that was in Acts 7, was confronting the Sanhedrin, and he actually confronted them over the Zodiac. All right? And there's a synagogue that was using it. Well, they continued to use it, obviously. Acts 7, starting at verse 41, says, "And they made a calf in those days, and brought an offering to the idol, and were rejoicing in the works of their own hands. So Elohim turned and gave them up to worship the host of the heaven. And as it has been written in the book of the prophets, Did you bring slaughtered beasts and offerings unto me during 40 years in the wilderness, O house of Israel? So he's talking to them. They like their sacred cow. Now, sacred cow is a metaphor or an idiom, and it refers to anything that you hold dear inside your heart that you don't want anybody to criticize. And I'm sorry, but that's going to happen today to some of you. Your sacred cow is going to get flattened. Now watch this. The Greek word syncretismos means the federation or the conglomerating of Cretan cities in Greece. And it comes from the word syn plus Crete. In other words, it's a synthesis. And it means, for our purposes, to adopt or mix together differing patterns. Learned from pagans. These are things that are learned from pagans and their heresies, actually. But the sacred cow, or the opus, is a stubborn adherence to a way of doing anything or something. In Exodus 32, we see at verse 4 something about this sacred cow was mixing together with the worship of Yahuah. And he took this from their hand and formed it with an engraving tool and made a molded calf. And they said, "This is your mighty one, O Yisrael, that brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim." And Aharon saw and built an altar before it. And Aharon called out and said, "Tomorrow is a festival to Yahuah." They were calling this thing Yahuah. They wanted a simpler deity than Yahuah. Now, paganism was actually hijacked, is what it was, by these Israelites. And this falsehood was brought in, and they fused these unrelated parts and turned it into the worship of Yahuah. And I'm going to show you a scripture where that was recorded. Now, defining syncretism very clearly for you, it's the combining of the characteristics or teachings of different systems, especially religious or philosophical. And it's the reconciling of differing beliefs. People have to stretch quite a bit to make that happen, but they do it. And a sacred cow is a person or an institution or a custom that's unreasonably held to be beyond criticism. Now, that's just the metaphorical term. But they're things that are mixed together and adopted, is what they are, under the guidance of the father of lies. Now, summer and winter is another syncretism that's adopted from paganism. Not summer and winter, but the seasons. There's only two seasons, summer and winter. That's all there is. You can see on this illustration, when the sun hits the equator in our orbital scheme, then, it's either starting or ending summer or winter. The calendar we use today is essentially a Roman calendar, since Pope Gregory modified the Julian calendar of Rome in 1582, taking away 10 days in that October. So Gregory hijacked the previous solar calendar. So he adopted a pagan calendar. The day begins in the evening at the setting of the sun, but the Roman influences cause us to believe a new day begins at midnight. The real new year begins when the sun returns to the equator at the equinox, starting the cycle of summer and winter anew for the northern hemisphere. Now, the four seasons are imagined, since in reality there's only summer and winter spoken of in Scripture. And this is due to the Earth's axial tilt and orbital movements, and the sun is either above or below the equator. Of course, for the southern hemisphere, it's different. It's the opposite. So what is constantly in the background all the time from the very beginning? It's the old religion of Babel, the old religion that we call astrology. Nimrod, Semiramis, Tammuz came up with this zodiac, and now they have wheels and horoscopes. Horoscope, remember, means hour watcher. They watch the hour of your birth, and But Shlomo, or Solomon, said in Ecclesiastes 1, "What has been is what shall be. What has been done is what shall be done. And there is no new matter under the sun. Is there a matter of which it is said, 'See, this is new'? It was there already, long ago. And in verse 13, it starts out saying, "And I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that has been done under the heavens. This evil task Elohim has given to the sons of man, to be humbled by it. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and see all was futile and feeding on wind. The crooked shall not be straightened, and what is lacking could not be counted." In other words, these things, he says, are feeding on wind. Now, developing doctrines. This is the response of the Catholics to this book that Alexander Hislop wrote. And it's admitted, he admits, this John Henry Newman, admits that these things that they practice in their religion, called Catholicism, were adopted from pagan patterns and origins. Here's a quote from chapter 8 in the book. It's called The Essay on the Development of Christian Doctrine. The development of Christian doctrine should come from where? The scriptures, maybe? It's not where it comes from. John Henry Newman, a cardinal by Pope Leo III in 1879, wrote these words, quote, "The rulers of the circus from early times were prepared, should the occasion arise, to adopt, to imitate, or to sanction the existing rites and customs of the populace, as well as the philosophy of the educated class," unquote. Anyway, then he picks it up again and says, quote, "Are all of pagan origin and sanctified by their adoption into the circus." I'm using the word circus instead of, But here's what I left out there. I'm going to give you the list of the things that he listed. Watch this. We are told in various ways by Eusebius that Constantine, in order to recommend the new religion to the heathen, we know it's really the old religion, transferred into it the outward ornaments to which they had been accustomed in their own. Read that slowly. That's what he's saying. It sounds like sophisticated hogwash, but he's saying it right there. It is not necessary to go into a subject which the diligence of Protestant writers has made familiar to most of us. The use of temples and those dedicated to the particular saints and ornamented on occasion with branches of trees, incense, lamps, and candles, votive offerings on recovery from illness, holy water, asylums, holy days and seasons. Holy days and seasons? Holy days? What? Use of calendars, processions, blessings on the fields, sacerdotal vestments, the tonsure, which is the haircut, the ring in marriage, turning to the east, images at a later date, perhaps the ecclesiastical chant, and the Kyrie eleison are all of pagan origin and sanctified by adoption into the circus. Okay. You'd have to be pretty slow not to pick up what he was saying there. It's a monstrous thing. Now, these are unrelated combinations that were all put together, making this system a monstrosity, a chimera, different parts all blended together into one. Syncretism undermines the foundation. Now, the foundation is Yahushua himself. He's what we build on. Did he teach us this stuff? No. The foundation is that Yahushua is the way, the truth, and the life. Yahushua alone is the foundation to trust in, and not men's traditions or false religions or former religions that belong to idolatry. Paul writes to these former pagans in Corinth, 1 Corinthians 3, verses 10 and 11. "According to the favor of Elohim, which was given to me as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another builds on it. But each one should look how he builds on it, for no one is able to lay any other foundation except that which is laid, which is Yahushua Messiah." So the power that was given to this woman. Remember the woman that we looked at in the beginning that was depicted with the zodiac around her? That's the mother of harlots. Well, this woman was given power by the dragon, and it's an institutional chimera. The people that are embedded in this don't know. And the whole earth is made drunk by these same doctrines, and they don't show them the whole picture like we're going to show you here, but the whole picture is not shown to them. They just see pieces of it. I'm going to show you a few pieces. It says in Revelation 17, and he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast covered with names of blasphemy, possibly the names of the Zodiac, and many others, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So the ways of the nations have embraced all these things. You can't go anywhere on this planet in any language and not find the influence of the old religion. It's there. Deuteronomy 18:9 gives us this warning. When you come into the land which Yahuah your Elohim is giving you, do not learn to do according to the abominations of those Gentiles. So he doesn't want us polluted by it. See, the dragon polluted the hearts of people by teaching them this stuff. You look up in the night sky and you see things that you don't want to see. But if you can clean your heart, then you can see Yahuah's face, because he is the face of the heavens. You're looking into his face there. And it's the pure of heart that will see Yahuah and not the Zodiac. Now, these trees, the Asherim, are an example of prohibited behavior. In Jeremiah 10, verse 2, it says, "Thus said Yahuah, do not learn the way of the Gentiles, and do not be awed by the signs of the heavens." That would be the constellations. "For the Gentiles are awed by them. For the prescribed customs of these peoples are worthless, feeding on wind. For one cuts a tree from the forest, the work for the hands of a craftsman with a cutting tool. They adorn it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and hammers that it does not topple." So syncretism is the mixture of false worship with true worship. And here's where it's recorded in 2 Kings 17 that they did it. And they were claiming to be worshiping Yahuah by means of it. And the men of Babel made Succoth Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima, and the Awites made Nibhas and Tartaq, and the Sephirites burned their children in fire to this deity, Adramelek, and this other one. And the mighty ones of Sepharim, I don't know if I'm even supposed to say those words, so I don't, because Exodus 23:13 prohibits us from taking the names of pagan idols on our lips. They also feared Yahuah. Now, you see what it's saying? It's saying they did all this stuff, and they also feared Yahuah. They did both. They mixed. And from every class, they made for themselves priests of the high places, and who offered for them in the house of the high places. They were fearing Yahuah, and they were serving their own mighty ones, according to the ruling of the nations from among whom they had been exiled. Oh boy. So it's like having scales on your ass. Now, here's some depictions of some things we're all familiar with. We see it all the time. The Statue of Liberty, Liberty. We're not even supposed to say her name. That's the Roman name for the mother of harlots. Now, the sun was worshipped in all the cultures, and the host of heaven as well. And Acts 9:18 says, when Paul was being immersed, it says, "And immediately there fell from his eyes, as if it were scales, and he received his sight, and rising up he was immersed." Scales have to fall from your eyes to see what's wrong with these things, because you're not seeing from the right perspective. If you're looking from the world's perspective, you won't see anything wrong with it. But if you look at it from his perspective, that's Yahuah's perspective, then you'll see it. The winter solstice is another example of a witchcraft event. It's called Yule, and it refers to the midwinter day. December 25th was decreed by this Roman Caesar, Aurelian, to be the birth of the sun deity on December 25th. Okay? That's where that comes from. It was decreed by a Caesar. Now, it was called the birthday of the unconquered sun. And this was carried on by Diocletian, Constantine, and Julian. And here's what these symbols mean. You can go over that real quick. It's just symbols, but they're things that were adopted, you know. Yahuah didn't walk that way. Something called Yule or Yuletide is midwinter's day, and it's referring to the rebirth of the sun. It involves this same old religion, leaven, that was leavened into the world. And, you know, this corruption is what the leaven refers to. It's a corruption. You look up in the heavens and you see what you shouldn't see. You should see Yahuah and the works of Yahuah rather than the Zodiac. And leavens the whole lump, you know, which is mankind. Yule is the celebration of the rebirth of the sun, and taken from the old Nordic word, Yule, meaning wheel of fire. The sun is reborn, and hence the cycle starts again. Anyway, here's the way it was in the United States, here in this country anyway. There's 200 consistent years of Christian opinion depicted in these two bulletins. These are bulletins and newspapers, okay? Public notice. The observation of Christmas has been deemed a sacrilege, and exchanging gifts and greetings, you're going to get fined if you do any of these things. It's forbidden. The government actually would fine you if you were in the 17th century, if you observed Christmas. Surely George Washington didn't do that, you know, but that's why he attacked that's why he crossed the Delaware, if you ever read up on that. Anyway, because he was attacking a bunch of Catholics that were the enemy, you know. In the New York Times newspaper, on December 26, 1855, it says the circuses of the Presbyterians, Baptists, and Methodists were not open on December 25th. They do not accept the day as a holy one. That's interesting. They knew. How quickly we forget. Now, how about a little arrogant nonsense to go along with this? 2 Peter talks about this arrogant nonsense. In verse 18, chapter 2, for speaking arrogant nonsense, they entice through the lusts of the flesh, through indecencies, the ones who have indeed escaped from those living in delusion, promising them freedom, though they themselves being slaves of corruption, for one is a slave to whatever overcomes him. For if, after they have escaped the defilements of the world, that means the world system, through the knowledge of the Master and Savior Yahushua Messiah, they are again entangled in them and overcome, the latter end is worse for them than the first. For it would have been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness, than having known it, to turn from the set-apart command delivered unto them. For them the proverb has proved true. A dog returns to his own vomit, and a washed sow returns to her rolling in the mud. Now, how about this? Is this arrogant nonsense or what? There's the vestments. There's this operation. There's, you know, all this stuff going on. And I'm not sure they even know what they're doing, but just go ahead and look at it for a moment. But I want to point out two important things that are being done here. There's this gesture, okay? The gesture is where you put your hands, instead of raising your hands to Yahuah, you put them together like this, okay? And maybe bow, you know. All right. That's a process that was learned from the East. Now, that's called namaste. That's what that's called. Now, there's also another object in this picture. It's this little box up here, and it's on this altar, an altar inside, shaped like an autopsy table. And it's called a gohanzen, in the Far East, and they adopted it and brought it over into their faith, as well as a lot of this stuff. Even the vestments that they're wearing, some of the features of the vestments are actually from there, Far East. Now, this is a example of a Gohanzen, that little box. It's the object of worship. That's what the Gohanzen is. That's why the Catholics that you see in movies, or even in real life, you see them walking down an aisle, and then they genuflect. They bow their knee. They bend their knee. And then they go into the pew. That's what they're really bowing to, is the Gohanzen. And any object of worship. Now, this thing that you see these people doing with their hands down here, that is the bowing itself. That's namaste. And it's in the Far East, it's in the Far West, it's everywhere on the planet. Where does it come from? Sun worship, astrology. Now, here's an interesting thing that's right here from recent times. This is within the last 10 years. In Wagner College, Staten Island, New York, on October 13th, Wagner College's religious community participated in the installation of an altar in the Caros House Chapel dedicated to the elephant-headed god, Ganesh. How convenient. Well, you think that might be a little bit like syncretism? A Hindu deity known as the destroyer of barriers. Around 40 students, faculty, and community members from various religious backgrounds gathered for the installation. These are the educated class. They don't get more educated than this. This gentleman, a priest from the Staten Island Hindu temple, presided over the Hindu worship service, conducted in Sanskrit to invoke this deity, that they worship, the elephant-headed deity. After a purification ritual, which probably involves smudging, he presented offerings of water, incense, and food, singing a hymn, reciting the 108 names of the deity. Following the service, the food offerings were shared with all in attendance as part of the blessing. The installation of the Ganesh altar was the fruit of 2 years of conversation about creating a Hindu presence at Wagner College. So there was a conversation about creating a Hindu presence. The chaplain, Richard Michael, who is also the pastor of Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Circus in Stapleton, Staten Island, is actively involved in promoting the interfaith dialogue at the college and in the larger community. He believes the addition of the Hindu worship space in the Caros House Chapel will enrich the lives of all Wagner students. It's going to widen the gates of hell is what it's going to do. But anyway, it's interesting, though, that they're all doing this stuff that I just told you about, the gesture. Now, don't criticize people when you see them doing it. They're doing it in total ignorance because the Gentiles are in ignorance. They don't know. And there's another picture of a Gohanzen and the Namaste. Okay. Anyway, these are things that are like what happened in the days of Aharon and Moshe. Aharon's 2 sons did something. It was called a strange fire. In Leviticus 10, starting at verse 1, it says, "And Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aharon, each took his fire holder and put fire in it and put incense on it and brought strange fire before Yahuah, which he had not commanded them. And fire came out from Yahuah and consumed them, and they died before Yahuah." So when we build an assembly hall, and we put in the floor or on the walls the Zodiac, what do you think Yahuah thinks of that? Pagan traditions were hijacked by Israel, and they always have been. 2 Kings 17, starting at verse 34, says, "To this day they are doing according to the former rulings. They are not fearing Yahuah, nor do they follow their laws or their right rulings, or the Torah and command which Yahuah had commanded the children of Jacob, whose name he made Israel, with whom Yahuah had made a covenant and commanded them, saying, 'Do not fear other mighty ones, nor bow down to them, nor serve them, nor slaughter to them. But Yahuah, who brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim with great power and with an outstretched arm, him you shall fear, and to him you shall bow yourselves, and to him you shall slaughter, and guard to do forever the laws and the right rulings and the Torah and the command which he wrote for you. And do not fear other mighty ones, and do not forget the covenant that I have made with you, and do not fear other mighty ones. But fear Yahuah your Elohim, so that he delivers you from the hand of all your enemies. And they did not obey, but did according to their former ruling. So these nations were fearing Yahuah and served their carved images, both their children and their children's children. As their fathers did, they are doing to this day. Now, how about a little sacrament action with that pillar and green tree? Well, pillar and green tree, yeah. 2 Kings 17, verse 9. And the children of Israel secretly did against Yahuah their Elohim matters that were not right. And they built for themselves high places in all of their cities, from watchtower unto the walled city, and set up for themselves pillars and Asherim on every high hill and under every green tree, and burned incense there on all the high places, like the Gentiles whom Yahuah had removed from their presence. And they did evil matters to provoke Yahuah, and served the idols of which Yahuah had said to them, do not do this. The garments that people see that they think are religious garments, they're a position of rank. They're sophists. They wear these things, and you see it happening all the time. Activities that you see. There's the man of the clerical collar. Oh yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of sacred cows. I told you about them, and you're going to get your toes stepped on if this stuff is important to you. But the Zodiac is dear to a lot of people. And, collars, ashes, statues, cruxes, monks, nuns, steeples, holy water. Okay. And you can install the third eye right there. You got it right there. Get the mark for it there. The Greek hat. Okay, now this is going to be another sacred cow, but I want you to find this in the scriptures if you can. Now, the Greek hat of Hermes is the hat of the deity of wisdom. It's the hat of a scholar. And it actually honors a pagan idol. Now watch this. The record of the Greek hat imposed on the Yahudim by Antiochus IV is recorded in 2 Maccabees chapter 4, verse 12. He quickly established a gymnasium at the very foot of the Acropolis. That's the foot of the temple, where he induced the noblest young men to wear the Greek hat. The Greek hat was the same hat seen worn by the Pope and the cardinals, and is direct evidence of syncretism. The Kohanim wore linen hats when they were actually practicing in the temple. They wore wool outside, which is like their physical bodies or the wool, and the linen garments represent their spiritual bodies. The linen and the wool. That's why you don't mix them. They put on the linen when they went into the place where they were to worship and prepare the foods. Now, they did not wear hats all the time, trying to show piety or humility as seen today. Neither piety nor humility would have been the purpose of wearing the hat. Their purpose was the same as one who wears the hair controlling devices in the food or medical professions today, because they were preparing food all the time, and they were the doctors. That's what their job was. Now, the function of the hat was for cleanliness, not rank, or to show piety. Yisrael's Kohanim were physicians and chefs. Kind of burns your beans, don't it? Now, professional speakers wore hats as symbols of their rank, and they also wore certain garments. This is a clay pot from the Greek culture, and the little guy that obviously is reading and writing is wearing a domed hat. And under that hat, you see the mortarboard, which is the sign that he's trained in masonry, but it also has the domed hat of the hat of the deity of wisdom that we talked about. Now, we're wearing this, I guess, because we're thinking that people like it, but let's not adopt man-made customs, and that's a strange fire, is what it is. A gentleman and a scholar wears a skull cap. The Hebrew word for this is kippah, and it means dome. That's the Hebrew word for dome. The Aramaic is the word yarmulke, or yeramalka, which means in awe of the king. Now, yarmulke means awe of the king. What king? Well, they were forced to wear them for the first time by Antiochus Epiphanes. Well, I don't get it. 1 Corinthians 11 tells us this, verse 3, "And I wish you to know that the head of every man is the Messiah, and the head of a woman is the man, and the head of the Messiah is Elohim. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, brings shame to his head." Not his head, but his own head, the Messiah. Okay, pagan culture is absorbed very readily. They love it. I know that there's some sacred cows getting stepped on out there. Watch out. In customs, dress, festivals, and symbols. Shame on his head. Well, it's a sad thing. He doesn't know this, I guess. Or maybe he does, but it's so sad. I mean, we don't criticize the people, because people that are doing things in ignorance don't know it. Now, these are some sacred cows, too. The day of the sun, known as Sunday, which is not the Sabbath. You can't have any group of people come together in a majority and decide that. It can't be done. It's not the Sabbath. Statues, holy water, obelisks, and steeples, prayers to the dead. If you're talking to dead people, you're practicing necromancy. The crux, the solar wheel, and the solar symbol. The pallium, which is this ankh collar that they wear. And prayer beads. Let's look at that. Anyway, the wheel of life is depicted here too in this Chi-Rho symbol. It's representing the celestial monogram of the eye of Horus. But look at this Hindu influence. Now tell me that this isn't odd. How could this be a mistake or some kind of accident or coincidence? Well, the woman on the left is doing the namaste. The woman on the right is doing the namaste. The woman on the left is wearing some beads. And the woman on the right is too. And look, even the turban or wimple that they wear over their head is exactly the same. Well, this is just physical manifestations, but the practices and the very fact that they're nuns. There are no nuns mentioned in Scripture, other than the temple prostitutes. But anyway. Halos. Okay. Here's another sacred cow. It's evidence of ancient sun worship is what it is. So where did all the beads come from? Pagans. That's where they came from. Matthew 6, verse 7 tells us, Yahushua's own words, "And when you're praying, do not keep on babbling like the Gentiles, for they think they shall be heard for their many words." Now, down here, on the left, we have the Buddhist beads, and we have the Catholic beads in the middle, and we have the Islamic beads, and there's usually names of deities involved. Praying to the dead. Well, speaking of praying to the dead, the Hindus prop their dead leaders up, the religious leaders up, and so do the Catholics. I wonder where they learned that. Is that just a coincidence? Oh, boy. They venerate dead bones, too. Now, venerate means to worship. And Leviticus 21, verse 11 says, don't come near any dead body. Now, in Jeremiah, it says, don't learn the ways of the Gentiles, and don't be awed by the signs of the heavens. Now, the signs of the heavens, remember, is the Zodiac. And that's one of the things that we can't do. So we have to stay in fellowship with him. In 1 Yahuah, or 1 John 1, starting at verse 6, it says, if we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, then we lie and we are not doing the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Yahushua Messiah, his son, cleanses us from all sin. The more you know, the more grief you have. In Ecclesiastes 1:17, I know this is heartbreaking to some people that are seeing the scales fall from their eyes. And I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I know that this too is feeding on wind. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases suffering. Now, here's the thing. This book, a book that was written in the early 1800s by Frances Rolleston, was called Mazzaroth. Mazzaroth means constellations. She was claiming that she rediscovered an ancient truth that Adam and Yahuah and all the early people passed down by word of mouth, that the message of deliverance was in the Zodiac. And she rediscovered it. Oh, yeah. Like that's something that we found in Scripture. It's all over the place. No, it's not. People are writing books even now. Nazarene leaders are teaching that this is the way it's to be. There's a secret thing. They're showing charts and graphs and horizons. And they're telling you that the star was, a planet or a constellation or something, And it occurred during a particular time of the year when Virgo, or Vigro, or whatever that is, it was coinciding with it. This is all imaginary folly, okay? But the gospel in the stars was not revealed originally to Adam. But Frances Rolleston supposedly rediscovered this truth and published her work in the Mazzaroth, which means constellations, in London in 1862. Now, many authors since then have uncritically accepted her work. They're all lies, and they come from the same source, and that's the old religion. Now, the mystery of the message of deliverance was never written in the stars. It was written in the word of Yahuah. And here's how we know this, too. Romans 16, verse 25 says, "And to him who is able to establish you according to my good news and the preaching of Yahushua Messiah, according to the revelation of the secret, which was kept silent since times of old, but now has been made manifest, and by the prophetic scriptures has been made known to all nations, according to the command of the everlasting Elohim, for belief, obedience. To Elohim, wise alone, be the esteem through Yahushua Messiah forever. Amen." Well, there it is. The secret was not known. Or that's lying. Now, 1 Yahuah in chapter 2 says, "The one who says, 'I know him,' and does not guard his commands," those commands, "is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever guards his word, truly the love of Elohim has been perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. The one who says he stays in him ought himself also to walk even as he walked. Beloved, I write no fresh command to you, but an old command, which you have had from the beginning. The old command is the word which you have heard from the beginning." Now here is the summation of the whole paradigm. You either have one foundation or you have another. They're both pursuing the same thing, and that's love, like I started out telling you. It's pursuing love, and this one pursues love by putting on Messiah. When you have his word written in your heart on the left, then you have that love. Now, if you put on if you build your house on another foundation, then you're pursuing a selfish ambition, and you're trying to find love, but you have to do it according to the prescribed paradigm of the pagans. And you have to find out what day you were born, when they were born, to see if you align with them. That's the truth of their thing, but it's a lie. It's feeding on wind. Now, you're either to love one and despise the other, and that's the way it is, because people who love that despise this, and the ones that love this despise that. There's something very, very different in these two paradigms. One of them purifies, and the other one corrupts, And it's your heart that's corrupted. Now, but from there, this is Deuteronomy, I believe Deuteronomy 4. From where he scattered us, he says, "But from there you shall seek Yahuah your Elohim and shall find. And when you search for him with all your heart and with all your being, in your distress, when all these words shall come upon you in the latter days, then you shall return to Yahuah your Elohim and shall obey his voice. Now, that's a pretty important thing to think about, because this, what you've just seen today, is the basic decision that has to be made by every person. You either choose to follow the world system, or you choose to follow Yahuah's system. So, and here's our commission. In Matthew 28:19, it says, "Therefore go and make taught ones of all the nations, immersing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the set-apart Spirit, teaching them to guard all that I have commanded you," all nations. "And see, I am with you always until the end of the age. Amen." Okay, any comments, or anybody's golden calf offended?
Lou?
Yes?
I always thought that the 12 constellations did have the story of the salvation.
Because you found it yourself in the scriptures, or you read a book?
I read a book.
Oh, you read a book. What was who's the one that invented the Zodiac?
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
The Hashatan. So the dragon has insidious